In a crowded shelter, Buddy, a frail, scarred German shepherd with a haunting past, sits silently, forgotten and alone. Everything shifts when a mysterious man steps in, sparking a chain of dramatic events filled with unexpected twists. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Thank you. The smell of damp concrete and disinfectant filled the air. The sound of barking echoed through the overcrowded shelter, each dog fighting for attention, for a second chance. But among them, one sat quietly in the farthest corner of his cage, a German shepherd named Buddy. His body was frail, ribs pressing against his thin, matted fur. His once proud ears drooped slightly, and his deep brown eyes held nothing but quiet resignation. He had given up. It had been months since Buddy was rescued from a neglectful home, where he had spent most of his life chained outside in the scorching sun and freezing nights. The scars on his body told the story of his past, a past he couldn't escape. Every visitor who walked through the shelter glanced at him for a moment before moving on. No one wanted the broken dog in the corner. Then one day, everything changed. Alex Mercer stepped through the doors of the shelter, his boots tapping against the tiled floor. He had been here before, but this time was different. He wasn't just here to donate supplies or check on a case. He was here for something else. At 38, Alex had seen more than his share of loss. Working as a paramedic meant witnessing tragedy every day, but nothing had prepared him for losing his old rescue dog, Bruno. Bruno had been his partner, his shadow, and when he was gone, it felt like a part of Alex had disappeared with him. His friends told him to get another dog, but Alex had resisted. You can't replace family, but today, as he walked past the kennels, something pulled him forward, and then he saw him. Buddy. Alex stopped in front of the cage. Unlike the other dogs who jumped and barked, wagging their tails in excitement, Buddy didn't move. He simply lifted his head, eyes dull, tired, as if he had already accepted his fate. Alex crouched down, pressing his fingers lightly against the cage. "Hey, Buddy," he murmured. Buddy didn't react. "Name's Alex. Looks like we both have some battle scars, huh?" A long silence, then a flicker of something in Buddy's eyes. It was faint, almost unnoticeable, but it was there. A woman's voice interrupted. "You don't want that one," a shelter worker said as she approached. She sighed, wiping her hands on her jeans. "He's been here for months. No interest in people. No trust. We think he came from an abusive home. He's a tough case." Alex didn't look away from Buddy. "Has anyone tried?" The woman hesitated. "A few people. He doesn't engage. He won't even take treats. He's just shut down." Alex nodded, his fingers still resting against the cold metal of the cage. "I know that feeling," he muttered. Then he stood. "I want him." The paperwork was processed, and soon Alex was standing outside the shelter, holding the leash of a dog who didn't seem to care. Buddy stood still, staring blankly at the parking lot. No excitement, no tail wagging, just emptiness. Alex crouched beside him, tightening his grip on the leash. "I don't know what you've been through, Buddy," he murmured, "but I promise you one thing. You're safe now." No reaction. With a sigh, Alex stood up and opened the car door. Buddy hesitated. For the first time, Alex saw a flicker of doubt. Not fear, doubt. Like he had been promised safety before, and it had been a lie. Alex didn't rush him. He simply waited. Then after what felt like forever, Buddy took a step forward. Not much, just one paw into the car, then another and another, until finally he was inside. Alex exhaled and shut the door. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Buddy sat there silent, staring out the window as the shelter disappeared behind them. Neither of them knew it yet, but this wasn't just the day Buddy was rescued. It was the day everything changed. The drive home was silent. Buddy sat in the back seat, his thin frame barely taking up space. He didn't move, didn't whine, didn't even glance at Alex. He just stared out the window, watching as the shelter disappeared behind him. Alex kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He had seen plenty of scared dogs before, but Buddy was different. There was no panic, no aggression, just nothing. A dog that had stopped believing in people. Alex exhaled and focused on the road. "You're gonna be all right, buddy," he murmured. No response. Alex pulled into his driveway, cutting the engine. His house wasn't huge, but it was warm, quiet, and safe. A far cry from whatever hell Buddy had come from. Opening the back door, Alex gave the leash a gentle tug. "Come on, bud." Buddy hesitated. His paws stayed planted on the car floor, his eyes flicking to the open space beyond the vehicle. It was the same look he gave the shelter parking lot, like he wasn't sure if this was another trick. Alex crouched beside him, keeping his voice low. "Nobody's gonna hurt you here. You're safe." Buddy's ears flicked. He hesitated, then one paw forward, then another. And just like that, he was standing outside, sniffing the air. Alex watched him carefully. This wasn't just a house for Buddy, it was a test. Would this be like before? Would this be another temporary stop before being abandoned again? Buddy didn't move toward the house. Instead, he stood by the car, staring at the road, like he was waiting for someone else to come get him. Alex swallowed the lump in his throat and gave the leash a soft tug. "Come inside, Buddy." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then finally, Buddy took slow, cautious steps toward the front door. The moment they walked inside, Buddy froze. His eyes darted across the room, the couch, the wooden floors, the warm lighting. It was too quiet, too normal. No metal bars, no barking dogs, no harsh fluorescent lights. Alex unclipped the leash, giving him space. "Take your time, bud." Buddy took a step forward, his nails clicking against the floor. Then another, but then he stopped. His nose flared, his ears twitched, and then he bolted to the back door. Alex's chest tightened. Buddy wasn't exploring. He was looking for an exit. The dog's nose pressed against the door, his breathing uneven. Alex didn't move. He just stood there, letting Buddy figure things out. Then slowly Buddy turned his head, not toward Alex, but toward the window, like he was trying to memorize where it was, just in case. That first night was the hardest. Alex had prepared a soft dog bed in the living room, but Buddy didn't touch it. Instead, he curled up near the front door, staring at it for hours. Alex sat on the couch watching him in silence. Buddy wasn't resting. He wasn't sleeping. He was waiting for the door to open, waiting for someone or something to take him away again. It made Alex's stomach twist. He had seen dogs with separation anxiety, but this was something else. Alex sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "You don't trust me yet, huh?" Of course not. Trust wasn't given, it was earned, and Alex was starting at zero. The next morning, Alex got up early, careful not to startle Buddy. The dog hadn't moved all night. He was still curled by the door, his body stiff. Alex grabbed a bag of dog food, pouring some into a bowl. He placed it a few feet away from Buddy and stepped back. "All right, bud, eat up." Buddy didn't move. He just stared. Minutes passed. Alex sighed and sat at the kitchen table, flipping through his phone to pass the time. Then the faintest sound of movement. He looked up. Buddy had inched forward, sniffing the food. He hesitated. Then a single bite. Alex exhaled. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That afternoon, Alex decided to try something new. He grabbed an old tennis ball from a drawer and rolled it across the floor. It wasn't a command, just a quiet invitation. Buddy's ears twitched. His eyes followed the ball as it rolled across the floor. But he didn't chase it. Alex smiled softly. "Didn't think so." But then, something surprising happened. Buddy didn't go after the ball. But his tail moved. Not a full wag, not excitement, just a flick, a barely noticeable twitch. But it was the first time Alex had seen him react to anything, and for now that was enough. That night, Alex stretched out on the couch, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. He had left the dog bed open for Buddy again, but just like the night before, Buddy stayed curled up by the door. But this time, something was different. Buddy wasn't just watching the door, he was glancing at Alex too. It was small, barely noticeable, but Alex saw it, and for the first time, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe this would work. That Buddy wasn't just in another temporary home. He was home. The days passed in silence. Buddy still kept his distance, never fully relaxing, never letting his guard down. He ate his food, but only when Alex wasn't looking. He moved around the house, but only when he thought no one was watching. The only time he showed any real movement was when he paced near the door, staring outside as if waiting for something or someone. Alex knew this wasn't going to be easy. Rescuing a dog wasn't just about bringing them home. It was about teaching them that home is real. And for Buddy, home had never been more than a temporary stop. One evening, Alex was in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich when he heard the sound of movement behind him. Buddy had stepped into the doorway. Alex froze. Buddy never came this close. He usually stayed near the front door, watching from a distance, always keeping an exit nearby. But now he was standing in the kitchen. Alex turned slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Hey, Buddy," he murmured. Buddy's ears flicked, his eyes darting between Alex and the food on the counter. Alex exhaled a quiet laugh. "You hungry?" Buddy's posture stiffened. Alex grabbed a piece of turkey from his sandwich, crouched down, and extended it. He didn't move closer, just held his hand out, giving Buddy the choice. The dog stared at it for what felt like forever. Then with cautious steps, he moved forward. One step, two. Alex barely breathed. Buddy stretched his neck, sniffed the turkey, then gently took it from Alex's fingers. It was the first time he had accepted food directly from a human's hand. Alex stayed still, watching him chew, watching his expression carefully. Buddy seemed unsure, like he expected something bad to happen next, but nothing did. Alex just smiled. "Good boy." Buddy swallowed, then stepped back, returning to his usual spot near the doorway. It wasn't much, but it was progress. That night, Alex sat on the couch, flipping through an old photo album. The pictures of Bruno were scattered throughout the pages. His first adoption day, their hikes, his training sessions, and eventually the last picture they had taken together before the accident. The one thing Alex had never gotten used to was the silence. Bruno had always been there, following him from room to room, his tail thumping against the furniture. The house had never felt empty, until now. Alex sighed, shutting the album. As he glanced toward the front door, he noticed something that made his breath catch. Buddy had moved. He wasn't curled up near the door like usual. He was closer, not next to Alex, but nearer than before. Buddy's eyes met his for a brief second. Then just as quickly, he turned away. But Alex saw it. The hesitation, the consideration. And for the first time, it felt like Buddy wasn't just waiting to leave. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to think about staying. Alex woke up to the sound of soft footsteps against the wooden floor. For a second, he thought he had imagined it. He blinked against the dim morning light filtering through the curtains, trying to shake off the haze of sleep. Then he heard it again. Slow, careful, hesitant. Buddy was moving. Alex turned his head just in time to see a shadow slip past the couch. His breath hitched. Buddy wasn't near the door anymore. Instead, he was standing in the hallway looking toward the bedroom. Alex held still, watching. Buddy's posture was stiff, his ears flicking with every sound. But he was inside the house now, not just in it. That was something. Alex shifted slightly, making sure not to startle him. "Morning, Bud." Buddy's eyes flicked toward him. A pause. Then without a sound, he turned and padded back toward his usual spot near the door. Alex exhaled, running a hand over his face. Buddy was watching him now, observing, testing. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe this wasn't just another stop along the way. Later that day, Alex sat on the back porch, sipping his coffee. The sun was out, casting golden light across the yard. The air smelled like damp earth after last night's rain. Buddy lay a few feet away, stretched out under the shade of the porch railing. His body was still tense, still half ready to run at a moment's notice. But he wasn't hiding. He was choosing to stay near Alex. That was progress. Alex took another sip of his coffee, staring out at the trees. "You ever been to the woods before, Buddy?" The dog's ear flicked, but he didn't move. Alex smiled. Thought so. A thought formed in his mind. Maybe it was too soon. Maybe Buddy wasn't ready, but something told Alex to try. That afternoon, Alex grabbed an old leash from the closet and held it up. "What do you think, Bud?" Buddy lifted his head slightly from his spot near the door. Alex crouched, keeping his voice calm. "Let's take a walk." Buddy's eyes flicked to the leash, then to the door. Alex could almost see the war inside his head. Walks meant people. Walks meant open spaces. Walks meant freedom. But for Buddy, freedom had never been safe. Alex didn't push. He simply held the leash in his hand and waited. Seconds passed, then a slow, uncertain movement. Buddy stood up. Alex felt his chest tighten. He clipped the leash to Buddy's collar, his fingers brushing against coarse, matted fur. Then, with the kind of patience only time could teach, he opened the door. For a moment, Buddy froze. His body stiffened. His breathing became shallow. Then slowly, he stepped outside. One step, then another. Alex swallowed the lump in his throat. This wasn't just a walk. This was the first time Buddy had ever left a place without fear. And that meant everything. The woods were quiet, just the rustle of wind through the leaves and the distant chirp of birds in the trees. Alex walked at a slow pace, keeping the leash loose in his hand. He didn't force Buddy to follow. He let him explore at his own speed. Buddy kept his head low, his nose twitching as he sniffed the dirt path. His tail remained tucked, his muscles tight, but he didn't try to run. It was strange seeing a German shepherd move like a ghost, his steps careful, measured, like he was still waiting for something to go wrong. Alex exhaled softly, one day at a time. They walked for a while, neither of them speaking, but somehow it felt like a conversation. Then something changed. A sudden gust of wind blew through the trees, shaking the branches overhead. The sound startled Buddy. His body tensed, his ears perked, and for the first time he stepped closer to Alex. Not to run, not to escape, but because somehow Alex had become the safest thing around. Alex didn't react right away. He just let it happen. Then finally he reached down and ran his fingers lightly over Buddy's back. For the first time, Buddy didn't flinch. He just stood there, letting Alex's hand rest on his fur. And for Alex, that meant more than words ever could. Buddy had just taken his first step toward trust. And for the first time, Alex believed that maybe, just maybe, Buddy wasn't just waiting for a way out. He was starting to believe in home. The house had changed. It was subtle. Small things that most people wouldn't notice. Buddy still slept near the front door, still flinched at sudden movements. But now he lingered near Alex just a little longer. He didn't bolt at every noise. His tail, once always tucked, occasionally flicked at the sound of Alex's voice. Progress was slow, but it was there. Alex never forced him. He never rushed him. Trust wasn't given. It was built. And Buddy was still learning how to believe in something again. One evening, Alex was fixing a leak under the kitchen sink. Tools were scattered across the floor. The cabinet doors left wide open. Buddy lay a few feet away, his eyes half closed but still alert. Alex glanced at him and smiled. "You gonna start helping out around here or just supervise?" Buddy didn't move. Alex smirked, shaking his head. Figures. He reached for the wrench, adjusting the pipe beneath the sink. Just as he twisted it, there was a loud, sharp pop. Then a burst of steam. A high-pressure valve had snapped, sending boiling hot water spewing out. The force knocked Alex back, his shoulders slamming into the cabinet. Ah! The pain hit instantly. Steam burned against his skin, the floor quickly becoming slick with scalding water. Alex tried to push himself up, but his legs slipped beneath him. His back hit the ground hard, sending a jolt of pain through his ribs. For a moment, everything blurred. He heard the sound of the pipe hissing, the water pouring across the floor. Then something else, a growl. Alex blinked, his head spinning. Buddy was standing over him. His body was tense, his ears pinned back, his hackles raised. His tail was stiff, not in fear, but in defense. Alex barely had time to process what was happening before Buddy moved. He dashed past the steaming water, his paws skidding slightly on the wet floor. He made it to the doorway and disappeared. Alex groaned, forcing himself to move. His arm burned, his head pounded, then barking. It was coming from the other room. Alex clenched his jaw. Buddy never barked, Not once. Not since he had been here. Something was wrong. He braced his hand against the cabinet, pushing himself upright. His body screamed in protest, his skin still stinging from the heat. Then he saw it. Smoke. His heart nearly stopped. Dark, curling smoke was seeping from the hallway, and it was getting thicker. Buddy was barking at it. Alex's body moved before his mind caught up. His training as a paramedic kicked in. He grabbed a towel, pressed it to his mouth, and stumbled toward the hallway. The air was hot, heavy. The scent of something burning filled his lungs. Then through the haze, he saw it. The outlet near the living room had sparked. A small electrical fire had ignited along the base of the wall. Crawling toward the curtains and standing between it and the door was Buddy. His body was rigid, his tail raised, his stance protective. Alex's chest tightened. Buddy wasn't running. He was standing his ground. Alex dropped to his knees, ignoring the pain, ignoring the sting of his burns. "Buddy, come here!" But Buddy didn't move. His body blocked the path to the door, as if daring the fire to come closer. Alex coughed against the thickening smoke. He didn't have time to think. He had to get them both out. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice firm. "Buddy, let's go now." Another bark, but this time Buddy stepped back, then another and another, until finally he turned and ran toward Alex. The moment he was close enough, Alex grabbed his collar and pushed forward. The fire crackled behind them. The heat licked at their backs. Then cold air. They had made it outside. Alex collapsed onto the driveway, coughing hard. The night air was freezing against his skin, a stark contrast to the heat inside. Buddy stood beside him, panting, his chest rising and falling in sharp, rapid movements. For the first time, Alex saw fear in his eyes. Not the quiet, resigned fear from before. This was something different. It was the fear of losing something. Alex reached out, his fingers brushing Buddy's fur. "You okay, bud?" His voice was hoarse. Buddy's ears twitched, his tail flicked slightly. Then he did something he had never done before. He leaned into Alex's touch. Alex exhaled, his hand still resting against Buddy's neck. "You saved my life, Buddy," he murmured. Buddy blinked, his body finally relaxing. And then, for the first time since coming home, his tail wagged. Not a flick, not hesitation, a real full wag. The house smelled like smoke. The fire had been small enough for Alex to put it out quickly once they were outside. But the damage was there. Charred wall, melted wires, the lingering scent of burnt plastic. It would take days to clean everything up. But none of that mattered, because Buddy had saved his life. Alex sat on the couch, an ice pack pressed against his burned arm. His skin was tender, red where the steam had hit him, but he barely noticed the pain. His mind was still replaying the moment in the kitchen, the flash of boiling water, the fire in the hallway, and Buddy standing between him and danger. Buddy lay on the floor nearby, his head resting on his paws. His breathing had slowed, but his eyes remained open, alert, watching Alex. For the first time, it felt like he wasn't watching to escape. He was watching to make sure Alex was okay. Alex exhaled a quiet laugh. "You're supposed to be the one getting rescued, bud, not the other way around." Buddy didn't react, but Alex swore he saw his ears twitch, as if he was actually listening. That was new. That was different. That was everything. The next morning, Alex woke up to a sound he had never heard before. Pause. Moving through the house, not pacing, not searching for the door, just moving. Alex sat up slowly. Buddy was standing in the hallway, his tail lowered but not tucked, his posture more relaxed than usual. Then he did something he had never done before. He walked toward Alex, not just a few hesitant steps, not just a cautious glance. Buddy approached him, ears flicking, nose twitching as he got closer. Alex held his breath. He didn't move, didn't want to do anything that would break the moment. Buddy stopped beside the couch. His dark eyes studied Alex's face, lingering on the bandage wrapped around his burned arm. Then he did it. Buddy lowered his head and rested it against Alex's leg. Alex felt his throat tighten. It wasn't much, but for Buddy, it was everything. Alex slowly lifted his hand and ran his fingers gently over the dog's head. Buddy didn't flinch. He let it happen. For the first time, Alex wasn't just the man who had brought him home. He wasn't just the next temporary human in Buddy's life. He was his person, and Buddy had finally decided to stay. Later that afternoon, Alex sat on the porch, a coffee in hand, watching the sky shift into warm golden hues. Buddy lay beside him, stretched out on the wooden deck. He still wasn't the kind of dog to wag his tail constantly or jump excitedly at every noise. But he was different now. He wasn't curled up in a corner. He wasn't staring at the door, waiting for it to open. He was here, present. Alex set his coffee down and glanced at the old tennis ball resting near the steps. He picked it up, rolling it lightly in his palm. He knew Buddy wouldn't chase it. He had tried before, and the dog had barely given it a glance. But still, something told him to try again. Alex tossed the ball a few feet away. Buddy's ears twitched. His eyes followed the movement. And then, for the first time, he stood up. Alex held his breath. Buddy took a few careful steps forward. Then, without hesitation, he picked up the ball. Not playfully, not with excitement, but with purpose. He turned, walked back toward Alex, and dropped the ball at his feet. Alex stared, then he laughed. A real, genuine, relieved laugh. "Good boy," he murmured. "Good boy, Buddy." And this time, when Alex reached out to scratch behind his ears, Buddy leaned into the touch. The world outside had changed, not in any grand, dramatic way. The trees still swayed in the same rhythm. The sun still cast its golden glow over the house. The wind still carried the scent of damp earth after the evening rain. But inside this home, everything was different. Buddy was different. Alex sat on the couch flipping through a book. But his mind wasn't really on the words. It was on the soft sound of breathing beside him. Buddy lay stretched out on the floor, his head resting lazily on Alex's foot. Not by the door, not in the corner. Here, with Alex. Alex barely remembered when it had happened, when Buddy had stopped keeping his distance, when he had stopped flinching at every noise, when he had finally started to believe that this wasn't just another temporary stop. He had stayed, and that, more than anything, meant everything. One morning, Alex woke up to a strange feeling, warmth. For a second, he was confused. Then, as he blinked against the early sunlight, he saw it. Buddy, not by the door, not on the floor, but curled up beside the bed. Alex's chest tightened. He had never asked Buddy to sleep there. He had never tried to coax him into staying close. Buddy had chosen it, and that choice, that meant more than words ever could. Alex shifted slightly and Buddy's ears flicked. His eyes cracked open, still clouded with sleep, as if checking to make sure Alex was still there. A pause, then, after a long exhale, Buddy closed his eyes again. Alex smiled. He finally felt safe. A few weeks later, Alex grabbed the leash from the hook by the door. "Want to go for a ride, Bud?" Buddy's ears perked. Alex grinned. That's what I thought. He had taken Buddy for car rides before, but they had always been quiet. Uncertain trips. This time was different. Buddy jumped into the truck without hesitation. Alex drove with the window slightly open, letting the breeze roll in. And Buddy did something Alex had never seen before. He stuck his head out the window. His ears flopped slightly in the wind. His nose twitched as he took in the sense of the world. And his tail wagged. Not a flick, not hesitation. A full, happy wag. Alex couldn't help but smile. He reached over, running a hand over Buddy's head. "Yeah," he murmured, "I think we're going to be just fine." And this time, Buddy leaned into the touch. Because this time, he wasn't just surviving, he was finally home. The journey of Buddy and Alex stands as a powerful testament to the strength of trust and unconditional love, even in the face of life's toughest challenges. From the quiet despair in a crowded shelter to the heartwarming moments of bravery and healing, Buddy's transformation shows us that every soul deserves a place to call home, a sanctuary where love and care mend the deepest wounds. If you feel inspired by this moving story and want to witness more meaningful journeys like theirs, please hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel today. Every subscription not only fuels our passion for sharing heartfelt stories, but also connects you to a community dedicated to spreading hope and positivity. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.